Welcome back to FreightWaves Now on this Wednesday morning. And we're also saying a big welcome back to Grace Sharkey. You're back on our airwaves again, talking a little bit different this time, all about what's going on your transmission podcast. Grace, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, so transmission has been a really fun ride. We've been interviewing a lot of great people within the industry and ranging from all types of different backgrounds, whether it's economics and working for like, the big three, talked with a number of heavy duty trucking companies as well and how they're helping building charging infrastructure. So it's been a really fun ride this last quarter, and we're excited to dive into news that's coming up in this quarter as well.
Yeah, so here we are, end of Q2, beginning of Q3. Many auto parts are still in short supply. We still have chip shortage that is kind of hampering the industry. How is the overall industry faring?
Yeah, so I think really what we're seeing is the industry is kind of just like we're seeing across most supply chains is we need to create a resilient infrastructure and really start considering how we're working with our suppliers and whether we're looking at more of like the just in time model or doing an interesting hybrid where we start working with different suppliers that can really help with building a chip infrastructure that will allow them to reach out to a different range of suppliers. One thing that I've been learning, speaking with a number of our guests, is that a lot of the chips that are used in vehicles are more of an older generation. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of like these buybacks, right? So that they can refurbish these chips for other needs within new vehicles. But creating an infrastructure that would allow these different OEMs to just really be able to buy from other suppliers, whether that's bringing those suppliers here to the U.S. or more of working with Mexico or just different European countries. I think that's what's been interesting to me is learning about the type of chips that have to go into these vehicles and what's really created this backfire through the pandemic, right? Because I think going into it, you heard from a lot of different electronics companies that this was going to be an issue to begin with. And I think what's happening now is the automotive sector is really trying to diversify the type of chips they need, what they're going to be used for, and really just going through this whole shift in what they're supplying their customer with. We even talked a couple episodes back about these aftermarket parts, right? Like there's going to be a lot less need for these aftermarket parts, but a lot of companies are starting to diversify into different types of offerings, whether that's cloud-based offerings or some type of different service that we even talked about when we were discussing this same revolution within trucks, right? Is being able to offer some type of technological solution that will allow them to move away from more of these structural pieces. So it's been a really interesting ride, especially for me. I feel like I'm learning a lot with Sebastian as well.
Grace, you guys talk a lot about new builds from start to finish, from parts to truck. Have you guys talked or explored any about the used truck market? If you've got a used truck to sell right now, it's kind of a hot commodity still, too. People are trying to get in there. Have you guys done any deep dives into what's going on in the used truck market?
We really haven't yet, and that's something that we want to focus on in this upcoming season, right? If you want to look at it, or quarter. We actually have some really cool guests coming up. This next upcoming week, we have an AIT who's our sponsor, their Detroit station manager that's going to come in and talk a lot about more of the trucks that are sitting in parking lots and not being used. But that is an area that we want to dive in a little bit more because personally, I have a lot of friends who are really getting pushed to either sell their trucks back in order to meet the demand that's being hit by these different dealers. So that is something that we're going to start diving into a little bit more, moving a little bit away from that EV area and more into the demand that a lot of these auto manufacturers are seeing.
Grace, I don't know if you have any answers on this, but I had something really strange happen to my girlfriend and I. We got a check in the mail for $7,000, and it just said $7,000 over market value of your car. It was the same place where she bought her car maybe 18 months ago, and now they're offering her $7,000 over market value for it. Are dealers on the big rig side, are they being as aggressive with trying to buy back some of these type of cars, or are you seeing anything like that on the in the big rig market?
I haven't seen that in the big rig market, but it's funny that you bring that up. I've had 3 or 4 friends experience the same thing, and a couple of them have followed through with the deal, just because it makes complete sense at some level. So it's funny that you experience the same thing. I can't say if that's happening in the big rigs, but I do know a lot of drivers who are saying that once they do see a used vehicle come up on certain sites as available, a lot of times what's happening is it reminds me of kind of being back in the day being a broker. They'll call in and say, "Hey, I'll pay cash for this," and it's already gone. So I can't imagine that they're offering some type of deals up. I think a lot of the issue is that with different regulations, a lot of the older models need a little bit more adjustments, especially depending on where you're selling them. If you're a company that's looking to go in California, there's certain needs that your truck is going to have. So I think it's a little bit more difficult to do in more of the heavy duty side. But I can tell you right now that I've been on numerous chats with drivers over the last couple of weeks, and it's kind of interesting to see how quickly when something is available, how quickly that's gone, and it reminds me of the housing market. To be honest with you, it's all cash and gone immediately. So it's an interesting time, that's for sure.
All cash, and it's how quickly you can get in there. Grace, we've got about a minute left for you. What have you learned so far since working with Sebastian? Of course, he's got a long history of being a pretty established author when it comes to the automotive industry. What has he kind of taken you under his wing, and what has he taught you so far in the last month or so?
I think what's really interesting, especially with Sebastian, is just what I'm learning more is just how intricate the supply chain really is, and how important every single piece of a vehicle is in regards to that supply chain. My experience in the past with supply chain within the automotive sectors is physically finding the trucks to move these goods. So a lot of my headaches and issues have come from maybe the timelines that a lot of these tiers request when it comes to delivering their goods, and how difficult it can be to manage those supply chains. What I really love about Sebastian is he's got this really deep insight and historical insight on how different OEMs have adjusted their timelines when it comes to different types of vehicles, and how they've diversified themselves within the market, and not just in the US, but when you look at European manufacturers, just how up to date he is on the various technologies that they've put in, and the partnerships that they've created as well. Like on this last week's episode, we had a friend of his, Sam, on, who's got his own podcast and is delightful to talk to. And it was really great to hear like this insider knowledge of the relationship between like Tesla and Panasonic, and how they've really grown together. And you look at headlines of them selling shares of Tesla. Panasonic did about a week or so ago. But you get to really see an in-depth view from their eyes of okay, this is the different ways so that they work together. And this is whether it's, real estate or different technologies, or just, a great partnership when it comes to buying parts for vehicles. It's just really cool to see his knowledge and my knowledge of supply chain mesh to create a really interesting topic and really interesting content as well.
And the podcast is great, Grace. Make sure that you catch that every Tuesday afternoon. It comes on after, it's either right after or right before my show, At Your Doorstep, but make sure that you're catching that on FreightWaves TV. Thank you for joining us twice this morning. We'll see you next Wednesday.